Hello, welcome back to my channel, AJ Budgets. I am AJ, and I am so thankful that you are here with me today. Welcome to a wintry, cold snow day in Midwest Missouri. Today we are going to do a CDs 101 video, so let's get into it. So I've received some questions from some of my friends who have been watching my videos recently about CDs. So I wanted to do a video just explaining what CDs are, how they work, and how to get started, essentially. So it took me a while to get to where I was comfortable doing CDs because I was always afraid I was going to need the money when it was locked up and I wouldn't be able to access it. And that stressed me out. And so it took me a very long time to get comfortable with the idea of letting my money marinate in a CD where I didn't necessarily have easy access to it. So we're going to talk about what a CD is and all of the things, and hopefully it gets you a little bit more comfortable with the idea of utilizing CDs to help your money grow for you. I think the most common question I get is just, what is a CD? And so let's talk about that first and foremost. So a CD is first and foremost a type of savings account. This is where you put your money into this savings account or their certificate of deposit for a set amount of time. So you put a specific amount of money in there and then you leave it for a specific amount of time. So for example, I can take $1,000 and I can put it in a CD for 3 months. And so it's going into this really high interest savings account. And then once you hit that end of the 3 months, you get that interest. During the term, you don't add any more money to it. So it's kind of like locked away and safe in the CD. So with the CD, it's like you're telling the bank, I'm not going to touch this money for X amount of months. And then the bank rewards you for doing that by giving you interest or paying you interest. And so when you think of it like that, I'm getting paid to save, like for me, that really changed my mindset and how a CD could work for me. Because we'll talk about down here in calculating interest, but you could potentially be making hundreds to thousands of dollars in interest each time that CD renews, depending on how much money you have in that CD. And then the longer you carry them, and then the more times you renew them, the more that money is going to grow. So the more the bank is paying you to save your money. So it's just an extra way to get some extra money throughout the year. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, how does a CD work? Like, how do you make it work for you, essentially? So first of all, you need to get it started. So you're going to need to go to either a bank or a credit union, so a CU or bank. And I think almost every bank and or credit union has CD options. You would work with a banker, and then they would give you like a rate sheet, and you can look at the different terms and rates. I know there's also some online banks that would let you do this online as well. I know like Ally Bank, and I opened up one of my Chase Bank CDs online too. So if you're already established with a bank, there might even be an online option where you don't even have to go in. So terms and rates, they're going to have set terms. So typically they're like 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 1 year, etc., 2 years, 5 years, etc. Typically, the longer it is, the higher the interest rate. Although recently I've noticed the CDs between 6 months and a year have yielded the highest interest rate in the last 2 years. And so that's why you would always ask for a rate sheet. And so you can see it'll say, like, for 1 month, you get 1% interest. For 3 month, you might get 1.5% interest. For 6 month, they might have a special running and it's 5% interest. And then a 9 month is 4% interest. And so you could pick the highest interest rate. That's typically what I do, is I'll pick the highest interest rate for the term with some of my CDs. Other CDs, I know I need to come up at specific times in the year. And so I'm cognizant of that. So if I need something to come up in March and it's renewing in December, I'm only going to do a 3 month CD regardless of what the rate is, because I know I'm going to need that money in March. So You can utilize those terms and rates to work for you and what you think. So you're going to have a set interest slash APY. So it's amount per year. So then how do you calculate that interest? So the interest is set at a per year amount. And so it's set at an APY, which equals per year. And so, for example, if you have a 1 year CD for $1,000 at 5% interest, that equals $50. So for every $1,000 at a 5% interest rate, you're going to yield $50 on that $1,000. Now, let's say we have example 2 here. You have 1 year CD. I'm sorry, not a 1 year. You have a 6-month CD for $1,000 at 5% interest. And that is going to equal, so you calculate the per year, and then you would divide that by 2 because 6 months is half of the year. So that's going to equal $50 divided by 2. And so that would equal $25. So if you had a 3-month CD, that would be only 25% of the year, versus if you had a 9-month CD, that's 75% of the year. So what I do is I calculate it at the APY, and then I figure out if I have like a month type of CD, what percentage of the year is that? And then that's how much that interest is. So interest can get a little bit confusing. The bank will figure that out for you. You do not have to worry about that. The bank will pay you. But if you like to plan ahead or budget or kind of see if your money would be working for you better than in your savings account versus a CD, that's a quick way to calculate that interest. Last thing I want to talk about in how a CD works is your taxes. So you will get a 1099 form for any interest. I believe it's any interest over $10, and you have to file taxes on it and pay taxes on it. And so the bank or this credit union will send you a 1099 form in February-ish, sometimes in January each year. And then you file on your taxes. What I like to do is save. So the rule of thumb is to save 20 to 25% of your interest for taxes. And so when I get my interest and I'm divvying up my interest and budgeting it or reinvesting it, I pull out my tax rate is 22% based on my salary. So I pull out 22% and I put it in a separate envelope. And then that way, when I get to tax season, ideally, I have enough money to cover the taxes that are going to be showing up on the 1099 that I'm going to have to pay. And so I'm going to pull out my CD binder here and just give you a little example of how I do the taxes. So I have my CDs. This is in my local bank here. I have multiple CDs. So I've got some Edward Jones CDs and then also some in my little local bank. And I kind of go back and forth between Edward Jones and my local bank because sometimes my local bank has higher interest rates and other times Edward Jones does. So I just kind of make that decision when they come up for renewal. So, as you can see, typically I've been doing 9-month CDs because those have been at the 5% interest rate. And so when I get my interest, I decide where it's going, and then I'm putting some into my tax fund. So my taxes here is 22%. So when this one came up for renewal, I put in $167 for my taxes. And so I have an interest envelope here. And it has that $167 for my taxes that I've received through my interest on that CD for the year of 2024. So when I file my taxes in March of 2025. So I file my taxes this year in 2026, I should get a 1099 from this bank, and then this 167 should cover the taxes that I owe for that CD interest. And then I've been able to reinvest my interest into my baby godson's checking account over the last 3 years, or not checking account, savings account. So I like to save for my godsons and my niece for a big graduation trip when they graduate. And so all of the things that have been funded for my baby godson, who is 3 years old, has been from the interest from my CDs. And so that's been really cool because, I mean, that's technically free money, right? The bank is paying me to have the money in here, and then I'm divvying that up and donating or putting it into my godson's envelope. So I'm saving and growing his account just by saving my own money, which is really, really cool. So that is how I utilize the interest off of my CDs. Before moving on to what if I need my net money now, one other thing with the interest rates is sometimes the banks will calculate it on like a month or quarterly basis instead of at the end of the term. So like Edward Jones doesn't calculate the interest until the CD comes up. So if I have a 6-month CD, I won't see any of that interest until the day that it matures at that 6-month mark. With my local bank, they pay out interest every quarter. So every quarter I get a statement, and then they add in that interest onto the CD at that time, that quarterly. And then some banks do monthly. When I had my CDs with Chase, they also did it at maturity. So there's different ways that banks do that. I don't know why. But yeah, there's just different ways that that'll happen. So that's something that you can ask about too whenever you're working with your banker. My biggest concern, and probably one of the number one questions that I've gotten from my friends, is what happens if I need the money now or if I need the money before the CD ends? And this is the trade-off part, because it's your money, so you can withdraw early. However, there will be a penalty. And what that penalty looks like is going to be in the terms and conditions. So it could be 3 to 6 months of interest, or it could be more for longer terms, or there might be a set fee. So it depends on the bank, and that would be something that you would want to ask your banker. But I always had that peace of mind. Like if I had a true emergency and I had no other way to get funds, and I was not willing to use my credit card to pay whatever emergency that was, I could get to this money with the understanding that I would be paying a penalty. Even when you pay the penalty, you typically will not lose your original money. Again, this is going to be bank to bank or credit union to credit union, but this is Edward Jones, and my local bank works this way. They have a penalty, and it's usually that interest-based penalty. So if you think you're going to need the money, then a CD probably isn't the right fit for your money. And so I have a couple of things here. So in my long-term sinking funds, I have emergency funds. So and this is in my money market savings account. I can write checks off this. I have access to this on the daily. And so I have like my Pet 7 ER fund. I have my medical deductible for the year saved, and I have a personal ER fund that's in there. So I have access to, I think all said and done, it's $4,000 that I have access to in my money market account. And so I know if I have an emergency, I have that $4,000 first, and then I put my excess money in my CDs. And then that way I have that peace of mind that I do have easy access money. And then that way I don't necessarily need to take that penalty. And then on those bigger events, like when I went to purchase my car, I knew I was going to start looking for a car in September. So I had that CD come up in September. And so whenever I was ready to purchase my car, I had access to that larger amount. So when should you start a CD or start putting your money into a CD? So there's a couple of things. So you can do it when interest rates are high, or whenever you're ready, honestly, because typically the rates, even if they're not high, they're going to be higher than your checking account or your savings account. So whenever you're ready. So if you have something that you're saving for that's 6 to 24 months out, put it in a CD if you have that ability. So one of the things that I'm saving for in my CD fund here is my niece and I are going on a big trip to Italy when she graduates. And so I'm going to need like $10,000 for that trip. And so every time I save in my long-term sinking funds, in my checking or my savings account, my money market savings account. And then once a year when the CD comes up for a renewal, whatever I have saved for her, I just add into this CD. And so then it's growing money to where I can invest it back into her or invest it into my other godson so I can save more for her. And so that's kind of how I have that work. So I know I'm not going to need this. She doesn't graduate until 2028. And so that's right now it's over 24 months out. And so I feel comfortable having that money in a CD because I'm not going to need it. You can also put like your car repairs, different emergency funds, housing or a moving fund. I also have a big emergency fund in my CDs as well. So this fully funded one is my emergency fund. And then in my Edward Jones CDs back here, I have my grad school, because I would like to go back and eventually get my PhD. And then I have a future house CDs where I have money that has been saved for, and I don't know when or if I'll be purchasing a future house, or I might need to do repairs to my house. So I have that money saved in those CDs back here as well. So again, that's not money I'm anticipating on pulling out anytime soon. And so I want it working for me as hard as it can. So, 6 to 24 months goals. So yeah, if you have something that's coming up in 6 to 24 months and you want that extra layer of protection that you won't spend it or won't be, calculating it into how much you have to spend each month, which is what I used to do, pop it into a CD. And that way it's there and then it's growing money for you. So why a CD? If all of this hasn't convinced you for CDs, there's some additional reasons why. So it's predictable growth. So once you have that term and you're put your money and you've started your CD, they can't change that interest rate. So if it says it's 5%, you're going to get paid 5%, even if interest rates drop to 1% on new CDs. So it's a predictable rate. Slash APY. So yeah, it's very predictable. And then you can make those financial decisions as coming up. It limits your spending temptation because it's harder to get to and you're going to have to pay penalties if you pull it out. So they're low risk because they are FDIC insured. And then the bank, they're guaranteed to pay you out once you've set that term and if you hold up your end of the deal. And they're awesome for goal-based savings. It's been incredible to just pop that money over into there and then I don't see it in my daily checking and savings account, because if I see the money and I see that I have X amount of money, my brain automatically goes, oh, we can spend. And I don't need to spend. I need to save because I want to do things. My number one goal in life is to travel and to have a house and to just live comfortably or as comfortably as I can given the economic situation. But in order to do that, I have to have my money working for me, and CDs have been a great tool for me to utilize that. Hopefully that gives you an idea on what CDs are and how you can make them work for you. I will have a CD interest budget with me video coming out. I think in February, it might be in March. I can't remember exactly when my next CDs renew, but you'll get to see, it's going to be a big bulk. I think it's going to be over $500 in interest. So you'll get to see how I budget for my taxes and then how I divvy up what I'm going to do with that money, whether I reinvest it or if I pull it out and put it into my sinking funds. So I'll walk you through that budgeting process. Thank you so much for spending today with me. I really appreciate you being here and asking questions and inspiring me to do different types of budgeting and financial videos. And I hope that you have found something that you can take away from one of my videos that helps you and helps your money grow for you. But that's all I have for today. So like and subscribe and drop me a comment down below. What is your number one tip or trick for saving money and making your money work better for you? I hope to see you soon and have a great rest of the month. Bye.